Hello everybody. Island Adventures is a mod for Don't Starve Together that fully incorporates the single-player DLC Shipwrecked into the multiplayer version. But it doesn't just drag and drop the expansion into DST, but incorporates it within the systems and mechanics we've grown used to over the years. So today, I'll be going over all of the character changes between Don't Starve Together and Island Adventures. Prepare to see whole new items for the tropical setting, reworked insight perks, and even whatever Wolfgang can now do. The link for this mod will be in the description. Please check it out. The developers did more than an amazing job on this. And yes, this mod is entirely free. Don't ask how, but Clay have given the green light for this mod to keep existing, despite the fact you don't even need to own Shipwrecked to play it. But enough preamble. Let's start by looking at these character changes to help them acclimatise to the new climate. Keep in mind that the mod is always changing, so what I'm going over may be different in the future. In no particular order, our favourite librarian, Wickerbottom, regains her book, The Joy of Volcanology. This is the only book that Wickerbottom lost when she made the jump to Don't Starve Together. With this, you can force a bunch of dragoon eggs to fall from the sky for massive amounts of destruction, and even a decent source of rocks, charcoal, and if you have some ice on hand to freeze the lava pools before they crust over, obsidian. On top of this, her angler guidebook will spawn fish shoals in the sea, since regular DST ocean fish don't exist in the tropical setting. You'll also notice that some of her books have tweaked recipes, as their ingredients ain't native to the Shipwrecked Islands. For instance, Lux Eterna uses rainbow jellyfish instead of light bulbs, and Practical Rain Rituals uses water beefalo horns instead of down feathers. Some characters have changes like this to make their equipment obtainable with the lack of certain DST resources and the ruins. I'll not go over every single recipe change in this video since some are incredibly minor, like swapping pine cones for jungle tree seeds or wool for cloth, but I'll mention them if they're relevant. Warley, now back on his home turf, gains access to his formerly Shipwrecked exclusive dishes, the mussel bouillabaisse and sweet potato soufflés. But on top of that, due to the lack of vault goats and depth worms, Warley is able to cook two new dishes, the jellyfish jelly and the rainbow mousse. These replace the Vault Goat Chauffoir and Glowberry Mousse respectively. The Rainbow Mousse even makes you rainbowy, I love it. Due to how jellyfish are much easier to get than Vault Goat horns, the Jellyfish Jelly is an insanely strong alternative to the Vault Goat Jelly, making Wally a powerhouse in this mod. If you want to know how to cook these things, then just grab a live jellyfish of your choice with your net and chuck them in its portable crockpot. Just make sure the jellyfish is alive, because you won't get any of the new dishes if they are dead. And don't forget to include the bones and honey if you're making the regular jellyfish jelly. This took Kezia and I way too long to figure out, by the way. Maxwell gets a little boost. Certain volcanic gear will now count for buffing your minions like shadow gear can. This is mostly due to how typical ruins gear isn't the standard when playing Shipwreck. So this lets Maxwell use the very cool volcanic items without having his shadows suffer because of this. And also, I'm gonna sneak in a little suggestion here in case any devs are watching. Could you let Maxwell enchant his pirate hat as well as the top hat, just because it would be thematic and match the magic potential of the pirate hatitator? That's all, thank you. But let's look at some new items. Wolfgang gets a new dumbbell, the Lime Bell. This replaces the Marbell, since marble isn't typically found on these islands. Other than that, it seems not too different from the Marbell, just a tropical variation with a very cool sprite. However, the same can't be said for the Obsidian Dumbbell. Think of this as a stand-in for the Gem Bell since, again, Ruins gear is off the table in Shipwreck. This dumbbell incorporates the heat system a lot of the Obsidian tools have, which lets it increase in power the more you use it, letting you deal massive damage and emit a very warm glow. But there is one big feature this dumbbell has over the other ones. If you throw it while it's red hot, well, yeah, this mod rocks. When I was testing this out, this caught me off guard so much I was just stood there awestruck for a few seconds. Due to the lack of fuel sight in Shipwrecked, however, this does mean that getting Wolfgang's elemental gem bells becomes impossible, since those are one of very few unchanged recipes in this mod, still requiring fuel sight. Okay, well, technically they're not impossible to craft, since you can very rarely get green gems from buried treasure or by mashing a ton of gems together as Wilson. Then, you take those green gems, some living logs and nightmare fuel to make a deconstruction staff by using a brain of thought that you can craft with brain coral. Finally, you can use that deconstruction staff on some fuel site equipment that you can also find from buried treasure to get your raw fuel site. So yeah, technically you can still craft fuel site equipment, but it relies on so many layers of luck or a couple hundred gems that it's just not worth it. And considering his volcanic dumbbell does, this, I think that's a fair trade to have. Let's dial it back a little bit now. Woody can utilise his hard hats to protect him and his friends from falling coconuts. Usually farming these trees can be a bit of a hassle, but with this hat, they become perfectly safe to farm. And since other characters can use this hat if Woody crafts it for them, consider giving it to a Wes, since this mod gave him a 4 times likelihood to have a coconut fall on his head when chopping down palm trees. So if you have a hard hat on, you can be safe and have a cheeky way to farm lots of coconuts. As well as having a coconut magnet on his head, Wes can also avoid drowning by wearing his balloon vest, which, in case you forgot, drowning in Shipwrecked straight up kills you instead of washing you up on the shore with a health penalty like you Don't Starve Together. Though you can change it in the config if you want the DST system, of course. Due to how graves don't exist in Shipwrecked, Wendy can now instead find pip spooks at watery graves. Oh my gosh, they're called ship spooks instead. This mod really thought of everything. You can also find loon tree blossoms in the slot machine if you need them for Wendy's cistern. If you do want to have graves and regular pip spooks, you can just craft them with her gravestone skill on the many skeletons you'll find littering the place, don't forget. Wanda didn't get any new toys except her watches requiring obsidian and limestone instead of fuel site and marble, but I'm bringing her up since due to how her backstep watches work, you can use them whilst on a boat. If your recall position is in water, you'll just jump back with your boat. But if it's on land, you'll leave your boat behind and just teleport back onto land. Careful not to get your boat stuck out at sea if you do this. However, something to keep in mind is that the inverse is also possible. If you're on land and your recall location is in the water, going back to it will drown you. But a slight silver lining is, much like in DST, Wanda is immune to drowning in Island Adventures. She won't even lose any max HP for doing it because it's impossible for her to lose max HP. Speaking of teleporting characters, Wortox. Again, no new toys or big changes for this guy, just a recipe tweak for his soul jars, and the nifty ability to sacrifice souls to the volcano in order to placate it. But if you're wondering how his soul hopping works in Shipwrecked, simple. You can only teleport to the same material that you're currently on. So if you want to teleport to land, you gotta be on land. And if you want to teleport on water, you gotta be on a boat. No teleporting from land to sea or sea to land. Though it would be cool if you could teleport off your boat onto land and back on the boat. But alas, sadly not. For now. Wilson gains a few new transmutation abilities for his insight perks. Transmit bamboo into vines and back again, limestone into sand, obsidian into hearts, and dead jellyfish into other dead jellyfish. Due to resource scarcity being a key feature in early Shipwrecked, these new transmutation abilities are super duper useful. Good old WX-78 gets plenty of love, in the form of 2 new circuits. Enjoy the Venom circuit, which allows WX to deal poison damage with their attacks, as well as the Waterproofing circuit, which does exactly what you could imagine, and because of that, is super invaluable. Won't make you fully waterproof of course, it just increases your wetness damage threshold for each one inserted. As well as these new toys, WX is able to scan the shipwrecked creatures to learn both their new and old circuits. Scan crabbits instead of rabbits for their speed circuit, and scan jellyfish instead of vault goats for the electrocution circuit, just to name a few. Wigfrid's Elding Spear upgrade now uses the magic seal from Sealnado instead of restrained static, since most lunar content is inaccessible. This makes getting the charged spear so much easier that it's almost broken. Instead of needing to kill Crab King and sort out all the Sanctum pieces, you just need to kill the first seasonal boss. Love it. You can even chuck this spear both charged and uncharged into a spear gun to deal some pretty hefty damage with it. Wormwood can once again craft Poison Bomb, an item he had back in single player that cured poison. Besides that, he got the Wilson treatment and got some new crafts in his insight tree, letting him create bamboo patches and viney bushes. But more notably, he's able to craft light bulbs with his lunar cultivator skill, which is really good since light bulbs don't exist at all in Shipwreck, letting you craft lanterns for your friends and light bugs for yourself. Since there's a new spider, Weber is able to craft a new switcher doodle for the tropical spiders, letting you have venomous little allies on demand. You may also notice there's a rainbow switcher doodle. They don't make rainbow spiders, but instead give you a random spider. This is your way of getting spitters, cave spiders, sea striders and such, since they don't naturally spawn in Shipwrecked. Though I do kinda wish we got a rainbow spider, that would've been cute. Winona is able to use her trusty tape to repair boats. With how cheap this stuff is to get, a very nice luxury to afford. You can also use her rose-tinted glasses to change the destination of electrical isosceles, much like regular wormholes. And, to wrap it up, she is the only character able to get scrap metal in Shipwrecked. Though not much you can use it on since Rift content is disabled, so I guess you can make a lot of scrapples. Yay! But now it's time for the big guns. It's time for Walter Don't Starve. This kid got some really impressive attention in this mod. First of all, marble rounds have been replaced with the nearly identical limestone rounds, due to how we mentioned earlier with Wolfgang, marble is no good here. But how about obsidian rounds that create lava pools underneath your enemies? Maybe you would like to top that off with an obsidian slingshot frame that lets you gain heat as you fire, increasing damage dealt and emitting a warm glow. And now we're talking. But the frame also functions like the fuel sight frame that it replaces, giving a secondary ammo slot that buffs magic rounds with area damage. It even works on the new obsidian rounds too. It's stuff like this that makes me love the mod so much. It could have just added a new recipe for Walter's fuel sight frame, but instead it added a whole new one perfectly thematic for the environment. However, if you're like me and love the scrappy frame more than anything else in the game, then feel free to craft it with gears instead of scrap, since the junkyard doesn't exist in Shipwrecked. But like we mentioned just now, you can get scrap with Winona technically, but you can't use it for the slingshot because now it uses gears. And yes, by the way, you can totally swap characters in Island Adventures because you can find the Celestial Orb as buried treasure sometimes. But we're not done with Walter yet. He can also craft a venom strip to cure poison with his field medic skill, as well as a slingshot band from snakeskin to fill the void from the tentacle spot and cattail one, and also a tar grip to replace the glommer grip. But instead of wrapping that tar around the grip, why not shoot it at your enemies instead with tar rounds? These offer a unique buff of making it so enemies take increased burning damage, making them a perfect combo with the previously mentioned obsidian rounds or when you're playing with Willow. But maybe you're more into shooting poison at your enemies with stink bombs. Walter gets so much love in this mod that it's utterly bonkers. Oh, and Wobie can follow Walter when he's rowing around in her own little dinghy. Perfect. Anything else for Walter since he's getting so much attention already? Yeah, he can shoot coconuts out of his slingshot. Fantastic. But there's one other character that got as much love as Walter. My main Wurt. First of all, she's already great for Shipwrecked with her standard passive of being tolerant to wetness in the world where things get really bloody wet all the time. As well as that, her not drowning passive from DST will take effect in this world too. But what is actually new for her in Shipwrecked? Well, much like Merms are in Shipwrecked, she's completely immune to poison in any form. Her tentacle detection works on flups, since marsh tentacles do not exist here. As well as regular marsh turf, she can also make tidal marsh turf too. Fits in with the tropical setting a little bit better. She can construct fisherman huts to spawn guys that catch fish for you all day for your kingdom. Place these near tide pools and enjoy having unlimited fish for your king. The Royal Tapestry uses different ingredients as two of them are much harder to get in Shipwrecked. This, in a way, makes it way easier to craft. The Merm King accepts limestone armor for his quest instead of marble suits, for reasons we've mentioned twice already. He also accepts the Shipwrecked Trident instead of the Strident Trident. This is a buff because the Strident Trident requires you to kill the Crab King and find like 3 narwhales, compared to Shipwrecked where you just find the Trident while trawling. And finally, she can make yellow mosquito items instead of regular mosquito ones, due to only yellow mosquitoes living in Shipwreck. These items are slightly stronger than their red variation, but this is only because mosquitoes in Shipwrecked only spawn during monsoon season, compared to how mosquitoes in regular Don't Starve Together spawn in every season except winter. However, Wurt does get one pretty noteworthy downside. She loses sanity from using the Cutlass Supreme, because, you know, it's made out of a dead fish. A pretty big loss, all things considered, since this weapon is really, really good, especially against Sealnado, where it does way more damage. Just gotta tank the sanity loss if you want to use it though. And that's Wurt for you. It's very clear that someone that works on this mod is a massive Wurt fan. A moment of thanks to that person for their work. Could be argued it does make her even more overpowered than she already is, but I don't care because she deserves it. And finally, Willow. Originally I was only going to include characters that actually got big changes, but I accidentally ended up doing every character instead, except for Willow. So I may as well quickly rectify that by mentioning that Bernie is made out of cloth now instead of beefalo wool, and that all of her magical spells work perfectly fine when you're on a boat. Drop a fireball at sea in case it gets dark, or flame blast sea creatures from your ship. They all work just as good as they do on land. But that isn't it for character tweaks. As this mod adds, Shipwrecked, it also adds the characters from that expansion here too. Willani, Woodlegs and Wilbur. Now, these characters haven't changed much from their single player adaptation, but there are some changes to mention. Woodlegs can craft doubloons out of gold nuggets, which is incredibly useful for gambling or making more of his super useful pirate hats. Willani's surfboards can be used by other survivors, but only she will gain sanity from riding the waves, however. And Wilbur is considered an ally to the Moonkey pirates and cannot be cursed by them. He can also, benefit from Wormwood syrup of Ipecaca. Yep. But wait Ash, how can Wilbur be immune to the Moonkey pirates if they don't even exist in Shipwrecked? Because the mod allows you to host multi-shard dedicated servers, which lets you travel between the forest and islands much like you can in single player. It's just that this mod mainly aims to be playable without doing this in a Shipwrecked and Volcano only environment, hence why most characters have tweaked recipes. But that doesn't stop them from adding interactions with core Don't Starve Together mechanics for multi-shard gamers. So that's all of the character changes between Don't Starve Together, Shipwrecked and Island Adventures. It's absolutely amazing how the developers of this mod did more than just simply port the DST characters over the Shipwrecked Islands with little regard for integration, choosing to instead design whole new items, systems and checks to make sure these characters are as much of a part of a world as they should be. And that's not to mention how bloody amazing the sprite work is for a lot of these items. Look at all of these. Near indistinguishable from the stuff Clay puts out, I swear. Thank you all for watching. If you would like for me to do a part 2 where I go into details about the other non-character related changes that this mod offers, then do let me know in the comments. There's so many new things and reworked mechanics that I could absolutely make a whole new video covering it. But for now, I hope you all have a lovely day everybody. Take care and love yourselves. Bye bye.